Hi everyone and welcome to episode 8 of Xbox 360, a retrospective, a series where I'm trying to explore my almost complete UK PAL Xbox 360 collection and provide a bit of a look back at what I think was one of the greatest eras in video games history. Now I was going to do this whole series alphabetically from A to Z. Sadly, after 3 007 games, 2 Ace Combat games, 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, and then AC/DC Rock Band, the next one alphabetically is, well, it's Adidas My Coach, and it's going to take a lot of planning and effort to find anything to say about that game that wouldn't just be an endless rant of profanities. So I've abandoned that crazy idea, and instead I'm just going to start picking games from the set, do it all out of sync, and make anyone with OCD lose their mind at me. So if you've got a passion for video games, retro gaming, and game collecting, you're in the right place. Drop a free subscription to the channel and never miss a beat on Xbox 360 retrospectives, game collection updates, and other retro gaming goodness. But with that said, let's jump into today's retrospective, because this, my friends, is Burnout Revenge. There are some games that are just synonymous with arcade-style racing games. All-time classics like Outrun, Crazy Taxi, Ridge Racer, Daytona USA. Classic racing games that don't take themselves too seriously. They're not built in any way to be realistic simulations or authentic recreations of driving and racing. And while pretty much every great arcade racer eventually found its way onto consoles, that style of racing game has also seen some outstanding games and franchises born onto consoles without ever gracing arcades first. I'm talking about Wipeout, Need for Speed, F-Zero. But for me, when I think in my head of arcade-style racing game, my mind doesn't go to any of those games. Instead, it goes to Burnout. Now, Burnout first appeared way back in November 2001 on the PlayStation 2, before arriving on both the original Xbox and the GameCube in May 2002. Developed by Criterion Games and published by Acclaim, the original Burnout featured a handful of cars, race locations across America and Europe, and gloriously smooth 60 FPS racing action. Taking its inspiration not just from arcade classics like Outrun and Thrill Driving, but also from classic car movies, including the 1998 Robert De Niro thriller Ronin, which, if you haven't seen it, features some of the very greatest car chase scenes you'll probably ever see in a movie. The game took place on roads as opposed to tracks, and roads mean traffic, so as well as battling the computer AI to finish first, you've got to be endlessly on your toes, avoiding the plethora of other cars on the road. The game featured the Burnout Boost mode, a meter that filled up for driving outrageously into oncoming traffic, near misses with other cars, getting airtime. Once the Burnout meter was full, you could deploy it in one continuous use until it ran out. But if you were able to continue driving recklessly while boosting, you could refill the meter while you were using it, allowing you to chain together burnouts. Most notably though were the crashes. The game took great joy in showcasing some truly spectacular crashes when you hit other cars or scenery, keeping tabs on the value of damage that you'd inflicted. Not that you got rewarded for it though. But all in all, Burnout was a cracking game and garnered strong critical acclaim. With good sales, a sequel was unsurprisingly greenlit, which followed in October 2002. Burnout 2 Point of Impact took the premise of the original and went down the kind of bigger, louder, better approach. Fundamentally, the game was incredibly similar to the original. Sure, there were some new things. The introduction of a pursuit mode, where the player controls a cop car tasked with wrecking a fleeing criminal car, introducing the concept of car combat for the first time into a Burnout game. Burnout 2 also introduced the astonishingly fun Crash mode, a game mode literally where you had to cause as much damage in a single crash as humanly possible. And while this was every single bit as much fun as it sounds like, there was actually a really clever element to this mode. Because it's essentially a set piece with the same things in the same place every time, it's almost like a puzzle game. You find yourself doing a series of experiments, trial and error, trying to work out the exact timing, the exact angle, the exact speed, the exact initial point of impact to maximize the chaos. It was a genuinely brilliant addition to the series, and when the game eventually arrived on the original Xbox in 2003, it had an additional 15 crash missions compared to the PS2 version. And yes, I double dipped on it without a single care in the world. And just a fun fact on Burnout 2, Acclaim's UK marketing campaign was intending to include a PR stunt where they would pay any UK drivers speeding fines on the day of release. Seriously, they actually offered to pay your fine for driving recklessly, so long as you did it on launch day, paid it, then sent the receipt to them for reimbursement. This stunt actually caught the eye of the UK government, who, unsurprisingly, were monumentally pissed off at the idea. And in the end, the stunt never actually happened. but kudos for creativity. By 2003, Acclaim were in catastrophic financial turmoil. Seeing an opportunity, EA made overtures towards Criterion to pick up the third Burnout installment. Now, Criterion and EA weren't strangers. One of Criterion's first games was the decent Dreamcast futuristic skating game Trickstyle. EA had set Criterion to work on an open-world reboot of the classic late 80s game Skate or Die, but Criterion couldn't find a way to make it work within EA's stipulated framework, and there was apparently a less than amicable parting between the pair. It's widely believed that project eventually became Skate, which EA launched in 2007. Still, with Acclaim up shit creek without a paddle, and EA faithfully promising not to interfere creatively on Burnout 3, Criterion took the deal and set to work on what would become Burnout 3 Takedown. And props to EA for actually staying out of it, because Burnout 3 was an absolute corker. Arriving on the 10th of September 2004 in the UK, Burnout 3 introduced the takedown mechanic, the ability to force other competitor cars to crash and rewarding you for doing so. This new mechanic led to a much more combat-orientated game than its predecessors, while still maintaining the dazzling speed and high-octane action that made Burnout so great in the first place. The takedown mechanic was truly a game changer, and critics absolutely loved it. It remains to this day one of the most critically acclaimed racing games of all time. In fact, it's one of the most highly rated video games of all time, and is often retrospectively looked at as the pinnacle of the arcade racing genre. Like, seriously, it was that good. And so for our purposes, we arrive in 2006. Now look, the fourth Burnout game, Burnout Revenge, actually launched in 2005 on PS2 and the original Xbox. But this video is specifically about the Xbox 360 version, which launched about 6 months after the Gen 6 versions, so we're sticking with 2006. So with that said, let's go over the key facts. Burnout Revenge was the fourth Burnout game, and was originally slated to be called Burnout 4 Rush Hour, before someone at EA insisted that no game that has a 4 in the title could possibly be successful. I mean, how many more games do you want me to put on the screen? They suggested the game should be called Burnout Revenge on Rush Hour, before it was finally settled on Burnout Revenge. It was developed by Criterion Games based in Guildford in the UK, and it was published by EA, who by this point had acquired both Criterion Games, the renderware engine Burnout is built in, as well as the Burnout franchise from Acclaim. The game is an arcade-style racing game featuring multiple game modes, and was released on the Xbox 360 in the UK on the 17th of March 2006. As well as the 360 version, Burnout Revenge also launched on both the PS2 and the original Xbox on the 23rd of September 2005. But as with Burnout 3, there was no GameCube version of Revenge. In terms of a Metacritic score, the game settled at 89, a whopping score by any standard, but especially high for an arcade-style racing game. In terms of backwards compatibility, it's good news on that front. The game was made back compatible on Xbox One in May 2018, and it was also back compatible on Xbox Series X from the machine's launch in 2020, so it's fully playable today. Online-wise, however, the servers are no longer available and haven't been since they were finally retired in 2017, so no online takedown trackers anymore. Now, right from the off, I'm not going to beat around the bush here, Burnout Revenge is bloody brilliant. It's still fundamentally a Burnout game, so if you have any experience of any of the other three games, you'll feel right at home with the sense of speed, the arcade-style handling, the gloriously simple yet utterly sublime drifting mechanic. But right away, like literally the first event in the game, there's another new mechanic added to the series that hadn't been there before: traffic checking. Now, at the time of launch, players and some critics were a little torn on this. One of the staples of Burnout, one of the things that made it challenging to chain your Burnout boosts together, was the endless threat of other cars. Not necessarily the ones you're racing against, more the endless parade of NPC vehicles going about their daily business, utterly unwilling recipients of a supercar bumper being rammed up their backside at frankly ridiculous speeds. Now, in Burnout Revenge, smaller vehicles travelling the same way as you are no longer a threat. In fact, they're an opportunity. Now you can fully, purposefully, intently and violently ram into those cars all you like. You even get points for it. You even get a smidge of your boost bar filled up for doing so. And even better, you can use the traffic to chain together crashes and takedowns on your rivals. So on the one hand, it removes some of the peril. Sticking to the right-hand lane now feels like a safe space, not worrying about weaving in and out of traffic, and only really worrying about the massive trucks that sometimes spawn. But on the other hand, it gives you that tactical choice of whether to sacrifice some boost you would definitely get from driving in the oncoming lane for the benefit of knowing that you can potentially use use traffic checking as a weapon against your opponents. It gives you a much bigger incentive to attempt a ludicrously ambitious drift, knowing there is half the road that you can aim to stick to, knowing you're not likely to be punished by a road car crawling along that just happens to be exactly on your line. I remember at launch being skeptical, but ultimately accepting it for what it is. The main crux of the game is the Burnout World Tour mode, a mode which splits the game into 10 different ranks that you must complete events and earn stars in order to rank up. Ranking up then unlocks new locations, new vehicles, and new game modes. From the very first event that I mentioned, which challenges you to cause millions of dollars of damage in traffic checking, there's a number of other different events to take part in too. Crash mode is now integrated into the tour mode, giving you dozens of set pieces to work out that optimal timing, speed, and angle to cause cataclysmic crashes. There's more standard races, both standard and reverse modes. There's also the road rage events, where it's not about getting to a finish line or crossing it in first place. Instead, it is about how many rival cars you can take down within the time limit. And I'm not gonna lie, these were by far my favourite events. An absolute symphony of high-octane destruction, savage and aggressive manoeuvres, and split-second creative decisions to make an opportunity to utterly wreck an opponent, all while being on your guard from being wrecked yourself. Getting wrecked by another player, while bastard annoying, is also a blessing at times. That car will often be labelled as your rival, easily identified by the customary red indicator above it as opposed to a blue one, forcing you to be the bull and charge at any tiny opportunity to get your revenge, earning you a healthy dose of points and boost for your efforts. The World Tour mode also features burning lap challenges, setting you some often incredibly challenging target times for you to reach the finish line. There's the occasional preview event, which is essentially the same as a burning lap, but it puts you in a new location and with a car you haven't unlocked to give you a taste of rewards to come. There's Grand Prix series, where you race 3 races back to back, with points being awarded based on your finishing position in each race. There's also the new Eliminator mode, where again there is no finish line, but the game will eliminate whoever is last every 30 seconds until the last car is standing. Mixed into all this are a series of challenges for each rank, and also a set of signature takedown challenges to try and achieve for even more rewards and unlocks. There's over 160 events in total, with the difficulty curve climbing with each rank, meaning it's quite a lengthy campaign if you're planning on getting perfect ratings on everything. The handling in this game I do have to touch on, as it really is something else. Criterion have always been highly regarded for brilliant controls in the Burnout series, and Revenge is no exception. There is a genuinely satisfying feel to this game, particularly with the drifting. A simple tap on the brake while turning into a corner is all you need to do to initiate the drift, and the drift feels so wonderfully easy to maintain. With just slight adjustments on the left stick, all you need to keep the car sliding. Given the sheer amount of objects, debris and traffic on the road, your drifts will often be accompanied by a trail of devastation which just adds to the feel. The boost button is mapped to the A button, and you'll spend a substantial amount of your time in boost mode, which ups the speed, blurs the graphics, and makes every weave and dodge that little bit more intense. But honestly, the game handles absolutely brilliantly. It's incredibly easy to get to grips with, and you'll be pulling Ken Block levels of drift and Richard Hammond levels of crashes in no time at all. Given the sheer speed the game moves at, you'll be forgiving about the very odd occasions where the collision detection isn't quite on point, but in all honesty, they are few and far between. The game runs natively on Xbox 360 at 720p, but it does run at a really smooth 60 frames per second, even on 360 hardware, and it makes it a much more satisfying experience as a result. Graphically, it's clearly a step up for the PS2 and Xbox versions, but I'll caveat that it's still an early Xbox 360 title. The skies are somewhat bland, there's an absolute ton of motion blur going on, and some of the car models really aren't great. But there's some really excellent particle effects. Sparks flying as you trade paint with another racer, colossal amounts of debris and damage to vehicles when you crash. In all honesty, the game moves at such a pace that if you're busy looking at the scenery and the detail, then you're clearly playing Burnout wrong. The game is 20 years old at this point, but in all fairness, it certainly doesn't feel like it. Burnout Revenge also has a split-screen 2-player mode, which allows couch co-op for races, road rage, traffic attack, and crash modes, and all the hilarity and competitiveness that entails. So while online multiplayer is no longer a thing, there is still a monumental amount of local multiplayer fun to be had. The one thing I will say about this game though is the load times. They are painfully long. You can get around this to a small extent by installing the game onto your Xbox 360 hard drive, but even then there are some long waits to load into an event. Look, I know we're spoiled in modern age with SSDs, and the Xbox 360 is a generation after the final switch from cartridges, but I feel it's still worth pointing out that the loading times are a bit of a pain in the ass. But all in all, Burnout Revenge is brilliant fun. It's so easy to think back to games you loved years ago, only to experience them again, and you can't help but feel they don't hold up today. But Burnout Revenge is not one of those games. The frantic, high adrenaline action, the breakneck speed, the quality of the handling, and the chaos of every event is as fresh today as it was in 2006. I was also really impressed by the sound of the game, the roar of the engines, the sound of the collisions and the impacts. I found myself playing with the music switched off, and honestly, the sound effects in this game are genuinely excellent, even by today's standards. There's a ton of challenge to be had in the game. There's endless hours of multiplayer fun to be had. Honestly, it is up there with the very best racing games of the generation in my opinion, and I would encourage anyone to play it. You don't even need to hunt out a physical copy. It's still available on the Xbox Store, and it's fully backwards compatible on both Xbox One and Series X. Achievement-wise, this is a really tough one. You've got to perfect every event in every rank and pull off all the signature takedowns and complete all 8 challenges in each rank in order to unlock an achievement for each one. There's cumulative takedown achievements to grind, as well as genuinely tough ones like multiple simultaneous takedowns or multiple vertical takedowns in a single race. Seriously, perfecting everything here is a massive grind. And also, there's only 805 points you can earn from this game now, seeing as 195 achievement points were for online achievements that are obviously no longer attainable. So consider this fair warning if you're a sort of achievement completionist. Value-wise, it's not super expensive. CEX in the UK, for example, have it usually priced around the £10 mark, which is also fairly consistent with the price you'd expect to pay for a nice copy on eBay or Vinted. It's reasonably common, although being an early Xbox 360 game, it's certainly not as abundantly available as Burnout Paradise, which arrived a couple of years later. But in short, you can pick it up relatively cheaply, and if you're a collector, you can afford the luxury of shopping condition for the best one available, without breaking the bank. And if you do want to pay to rent an executable license for a digital copy, you can do that on the Xbox Store for £9.99. But seriously, don't buy digital, do it properly, buy a disc, keep it forever. So there you go. That was Burnout Revenge. At some point down the line, we'll cover the sequel to this one, Burnout Paradise. But in the meantime, what did you think of Burnout Revenge back in the day? Have you played it again lately? And how do you think it holds up today? Maybe you think I'm completely and utterly wrong on this one, and Burnout Revenge was a disappointment to you. Don't be shy, let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please drop it a like, and just a reminder that you can and should subscribe to my channel for free. There's a ton more retrospectives in the works. I've got collection updates coming, and I'll even pass on the occasional games industry tips to any budding content creators out there. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, be awesome to each other, and I unconditionally love your hecking faces.